Welcome back to a new video of mine where I'm going to show you how I learn game development. First, we have to decide what engine are we going to use. There are three big engines that are commonly used. We have Godot, Unity, and Unreal Engine. For this project, I'm going to use Godot since it's beginner friendly and it's somewhat similar to Python, which I already know some of it. Since it's my first time using Godot, I had to learn it, and I did that by following Rapid Vector's 8-hour long complete tutorial to create the own 2D farming game. I know this is not exactly what I'm gonna build later, but this is gonna provide me with the basics and the understanding to create my own game later. So we dive into an 8-hour marathon of learning Godot. As I followed the tutorial, I quickly learned about the structure of Godot. Everything is based on nodes that are being connected with each other. Since it's a tutorial, I'm also using a pre-made graphic set, so I did not have to draw everything myself. I started learning how a tile system works in Godot and created even my first scene. Quickly after that, I started on the character and gave him some basic movements based on the inputs of a player. What I underestimated until this point was how many different frames a character needs for each animation in each direction. I fear this will probably take me a long time to do myself once I get started on my own project. I also added a couple of different states to the player using a state machine, which was quite complicated at first, but I think I understand it now. And there we have a first look at the player being able to move in all directions. This point was only an hour into the 8-hour long tutorial, but I've spent already a lot of time into debugging, and in general I was just slow. This made me realize how long it actually takes to create even such a simple game. Nevertheless, it did not stop me from moving onwards and continuing with the tutorial. In the next part, I've learned how to layer different scenes on top of each other and how to work with collisions. The most challenging part here was creating a functioning door that would allow a player to go through if he comes close to it. By defining the house as one layer and the player is another layer, I was able to set rules for different layers interacting with each other. At first this seemed like a small feature, but I quickly realized how crucial it is for designing interactive environments. To make the door functional, I had to create an area that detects when the player is near. Once the player enters this area, the game triggers an animation of the door opening and the player can walk through. As you can see, the player is still able to move around, but cannot enter the house through the walls as he collides with them. But when he enters a nearby area of the door, the opening or closing animation is being played and he is allowed through. These interactions are also going to be in my own game, so this was a really interesting part of the tutorial. Learning how to handle layers, interactions, and animations is something I'll definitely be using moving forward. I was really excited about this part since it would finally bring real functionality into the game. A player chopping down a tree, causing it to drop an item that could be collected. This is a key mechanic in so many games, and I was eager to learn how to implement it. But oh boy, did I underestimate the difficulty? Yes. I quickly found myself lost between multiple scenes, objects, and their scripts, struggling to figure out which object was passing information to which. And then came the real headache, a single line of error code. I spent an hour debugging, convinced I had finally cracked the problem, when I realized I hadn't assigned a tool to the object. Full of hope, I tested it again, and it still did not work. In the end, it all came down to a simple definition of a variable that was missing. But after all the frustration, the mechanic is now working. After 3 hits, the tree drops a log and the player can collect it. Small victory, but a big step forward. For the next part of the video, you gotta buckle up, because now I'm going to quickly run through some smaller additions that I made. First up, we have reusable components. Instead of rewriting code for every new object, like trees or stones, I created reusable components and scripts. I can now just copy and paste the same code, tweak a few values, and boom, new objects like this larger tree or stones are in the game. It's way faster and it keeps the code clean. Next up, I introduced Y sorting for character and objects into the game. Why is that important, you may ask? I added it so the player can move behind trees or stones by checking their Y positions. If the player is higher, they go behind an object, and if they are lower, they stay in front. This way, the whole world feels a lot more dynamic, and you create some sort of layering into a 2D game. Now on to the third and final part for the small additions. I made my first NPCs, small little chickens. They can randomly wander in a set area, and they avoid each other by checking if they're too close. It makes them feel more alive and adding that little extra detail to the game. As you can see, none of them touch, and they all move freely around. Honestly, I learned so much from this tutorial, I can't wait to start on my own game soon. That's it for this week. In the next video, I'll be showing how I started with my own dream game. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any suggestions for what I could include into my game, please write a comment and I'll see you next week.